Before we jump into the show, I want to let you guys know that this show is being sponsored by PristineAuction.com. They have hundreds of daily auctions with brand new items every single day. Everything is JSA certified, so you know it's all 100% authentic. It's free to join, it's free to bid, and you only pay when you win. Check out PristineAuction.com and let them know that you heard about them from Sleeper Wire. That's PRISTINE auction.com.
Welcome, Sleepers. We have another special edition of your Thursday night football. Here with me tonight, I have Sir Moose himself. You will notice that we are missing the Professor Chris. This is the first one he's missed. He's off having some sort of a party, grading calculus finals. But I do have my man Hoos here with me to hold down the fort. Hoos, how you doing, bud?
Oh man, it's the sad times are finally here, but guess what? It's not sad because we're in the finals and we're gonna win some championships. It's sweet.
Absolutely. That is the goal. And if you guys have been listening in with us all season, which I know a lot of you have, you are probably in the finals also if you avoided some of these freak accidents here with injuries and other things that couldn't be predicted. But hopefully you navigated around those properly. And we're going to jump right in. There is no Thursday night football this week, but there is a couple Saturday games. And let's just jump right into that. The first one that we have is Redskins at the Titans. Fourth, we have Josh Johnson. What to say about this guy? He was 16 for 25 and 151 yards and a touchdown last week. Wouldn't expect him to do much against the Titans. Peterson was 19 for 51. Crowder had a big play that kept a drive going. That was a pretty lucky play, but he was 4 for 4 on 46 yards. Other than that, is there anyone else that we need to be talking about on the Skins right now?
Not really. It's ugly out there. I don't think it's in terms of fantasy, unless you're in a really, really deep league, maybe you can still try to use like a Chris Thompson or something like that. But it's not much going on out there. Maybe Vernon Davis, but other than that.
Yeah, Vernon Davis disappeared last week. He exited briefly for a concussion check and a little bit of a neck injury. He looked to have a big play on the drive. Or he didn't look to. He did have a big play on the drive, and they got into the red zone. They subbed him out, and of course they threw it to the backup tight end, Sprinkles, who scored the touchdown, which would have made Davis fantasy relevant, but he really was not. Flipping over to the other side of the ball, we had Marcus Mariota last week. He was 12 for 20 and 88 yards with no touchdown. This was a terrible game for Mariota, but guess who did not have a terrible game? His name is Henry, Derrick Henry, winning people championship games. 33 for 170, 33 totes for 170 and 2 touchdowns. Is this guy a must start this week? I can't believe we're talking about this, but is he a must start against the Redskins?
I mean, he obviously he's got 6 touchdowns in the past 2 games. It's insane. Like over 400 yards in these past 2 games. It's insane. Like, wow, is what we've been finally hoping him to be. It's happening for Derrick Henry. So if you held on to him, he's still on your roster, you plucked him up off the waivers, congratulations. He's going to be that championship back for you. Yes, you're starting this guy.
It hurts me. It hurts me. Corey Davis was 3 receptions on 6 targets, 33 yards. Lewis has kind of disappeared with the emergence of Henry. He had 42 total yards. And that's really all we need to talk about for this game. Tennessee's defense is a great start this week. This is not going to be a very exciting matchup. Moving on to Saturday night, we have Ravens at the Chargers at 8:20 Eastern. Lamar Jackson has been carrying this Baltimore team, and it's been fun to watch. He was 14 for 23 131 yards and a touchdown last week. Not a huge game, but he is effective for the Ravens, and not a terrible start this week against the Chargers. Gus the Bus was 19 for 104 on the ground and a touchdown. This guy has been an every week starter for you since since they finally got him into the game. Dixon was 11 for a total of 48, and we thought he might possibly break out and have a couple big plays, but really kind of put up a mediocre game for you. Didn't look bad, but Gus has just really been the one getting the work. Guy named Chris Moore had 1 target, 1 reception. It was a touchdown for 5 yards. Snead had 6 targets, 5 catches for 58 yards. Not a terrible game in PPR. Flipping over to the other side of the ball, we have Rivers, who was 26 for 38 last week, 313 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 2-point conversion, but also 2 interceptions and was sacked 5 times. So if you're in a league that takes away for sacks, that hurts you pretty bad on Thursday night. Keenan
like
Allen,
the one you were telling me about earlier.
Yeah, exactly. And so that hurt. Keenan Allen, he has 2 limited sessions this week. He missed most of last game after he came down with what looked like a touchdown pass, but ended up landing funny on his hip. They ruled it not a touchdown. Insult to injury. He didn't play the rest of the game with the hip. We hope to see him this week, but it's really still up in the air. Mike Williams balled out, 7 catches on 9 targets for 76 yards and 2 touchdowns and the 2-point conversion. Tyrell Williams was 6 for 12 and 71 yards. He could be a sneaky play if he's available and you're hurting.
Mm-hmm.
And Gates showed up last week and did what he needed to do. He caught 4 balls on 5 targets for 54 yards. What do you think about this Ravens-Chargers game, Who do you like here?
I like all the weapons here. You got to love Melvin Gordon coming back.
That's right.
Tyrell Williams is going to be a nice feature. Obviously, Mike Williams, he's going to start to, and I don't know. I think Keenan Allen could be out there as a decoy. Not sure if he's going to be 100% out there. So, yeah, I like those guys. Obviously, you're going to start Keenan Allen.
Yep.
Even though he gave you the donut.
So is Mike Williams a must start for you this week?
Yeah, I think so. At this point, he seems to be the reliable guy for Rivers. And Rivers is hot. He's hot. And Williams is looking the same. Those guys are just connecting, and they're both looking like the pair that we thought that they would be. So it's nice.
Would you be comfortable starting Rivers in your championship against the Ravens, or would you have looked to or currently be looking to try to pick up another quarterback to play? Let me say this. If you had Rivers or Baker Mayfield, who would you start this week?
Who does Mayfield have?
Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm going Mayfield.
What about Rivers or Josh Allen?
Allen.
Okay, so there are a lot of options out there, it sounds like, that you would play over Rivers just because out of pure respect for the Ravens defense, which really is able to limit the fantasy production.
100%. I mean, you have to respect it. Even though you want to play the guy that got you there at this position, there's a lot of guys that can get it done for you. We just mentioned a couple. You want to play it somewhat safe, and then hopefully the rest of your lineup, does what it needs to do.
All right, let's move on to the Sunday games, the 1 p.m. or the noon games, depending on where you are. Bengals at the Browns first. Driscoll, not a guy you're starting. He was 14 for 33 last week. 130 in the air, a touchdown, and an interception. Mixon, this guy is a beast. He has a wrist and also a thigh injury popped up on the injury report today, but we expect him to be all systems go.
He'll be fine. Yeah.
And should be a good start. Tyler Boyd, he's been having a phenomenal season. He had a good game going last week and got injured late in the first half. He is out this week and likely for the remainder of the regular season. And honestly, really the remainder of the season for the Bengals, because they won't be going to the playoffs. So that's pretty disappointing.
Like that you even want to start from the Cincinnati side, I guess.
Just Mixon. He's the only guy. Like you don't really want to start Uzomah.
Cody Core, possibly in a deep league.
Maybe Ross. Maybe Ross gets in the end zone for you if they're able to move the ball at all. But honestly, Cleveland looked really good defensively against Denver last week at Denver. So I expect the Cleveland defense to be a very good play at home against Cincinnati this week. Flipping over to the other side of the ball, we have Baker Mayfield. This dude is a monster. Didn't have a huge game last week. 18 for 31, 188 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He had his best game of the season so far against Cincinnati at Cincinnati. So I expect him to have a big game here at home. Chubb was 12 for 100, 5 yards a total, 130 yards total last week. He is a monster. He is winning people some leagues. Callaway was 5 for 7 and 35 and a touchdown. Landry was 3 receptions on 8 targets for 37 yards. Kind of fell off after a few big weeks. Njoku hauled in 3 targets for 30 yards on 5 receptions. Honestly, I'm playing every single one of the Browns if you have them this week. I expect a big game out of them. How are you feeling about this, Hoos? What Browns are you liking?
I can't say the same just because Browns are kind of like, aside from the last game where they all kind of look decent, you usually can't depend on the Browns. Other than Chubb in Mayfield, you usually can't depend on a Callaway. Callaway had 1 point for you last week. I'm sorry, not last week. The week before last. And then he had 9 points, 16, which was nice. He had a touchdown. He's been really up and down. He's really not a guy that I'm trusting in my championship game. And Njoku, you're probably starting just because tight ends have been so bad this year. But I don't know. I might even start the guy out of Denver, Lacoste, over him.
I don't think I could condone that, and I really am looking for the Browns to have another statement game against the Bengals and their old head coach Hugh Jackson. I think that Baker comes out and they all come out pretty fired up, and the Browns, they've been looking good, and this is the best that they've looked in a long time. So I think that they're on a roll and they can put up some numbers here. Flipping over to the next game, we have Buccaneers at the Cowboys. Jameis Winston last week was 13 on 25 throws for 157, no touchdowns and a pick. It was really an off game for him. Evans hauled in 4 targets on 9 receptions for 121 yards. Peyton Barber had a really good game. I know you were real big on him, Hoos. He had 19 totes, 85 yards, and a touchdown. Brate disappeared with 1 catch for 9 yards. The Buccaneers are really just falling apart in general recently. Do you have any big expectations for him this week against the Cowboys?
No, I mean, against the Cowboys have been really good on the defensive side this year. So, no, I do think that Winston has to bounce back, but in maybe like a fantasy side, 19, 20-point effort. But, I don't know how much that is bouncing back. I think he gets you that. Maybe not single point outing. But
I'd be surprised, if he gets the 20.
Well, the thing is, I don't think you're going to be able to get the guys like the Evans. Well, I think all these guys are going to get sprinkled in small points. So I don't know, obviously you're starting these guys either way. Yeah, it's a tough defense.
For me, Evans is the only one that I really feel comfortable starting. Flipping over to the other side of the ball, we have Dak, who went 24 for 39 last week, 206 yards and an interception. It was a miserable game for the Cowboys as a whole. Zeke had 18 totes for 87 yards. Cooper had 14 catches for 32 yards. I look for for these guys to bounce back. I think Dak's a decent play this week. I think Zeke ends up being a monster, and I think Cooper puts up a more decent stat line for you this week. So you can go ahead
going back to the well.
Yeah.
Going back to the well.
So let's just forget this last, as a Cowboys fan, let's forget that they just got shut out. First time that's happened in 15 years. Oh, man.
Man, aren't you lucky? Like, this has been a year that you've heard probably so much praise as a Cowboys fan, from so many perspectives.
Yeah, and, it's kind of all around, but it's hit or miss just because Jason Garrett really kind of feels like a yes man. He's not very creative, and we saw that last week the Colts found a way to shut down the Cowboys. They limited what they were able to do, and the Cowboys just kept trying to do what was not working rather than switch it up. If they would have done a little more RPO with Dak and got him mobile to open some things up, I think that the Cowboys actually could have moved the ball, but they kept doing the same thing over and over, and it just wasn't working. And Andrew Luck, he roasted him. Luck's a beast. We'll get to that in a minute. Flipping over to the Vikings at Lions. Kirky boy, he's not been helping you out here recently. He was 14 for 21, 215 and 2 touchdowns with 1 interception. This was the first game that we saw with the new OC. They had a 2-to-1 run-to-pass ratio, which is what everyone was looking for who had Dalvin Cook. We saw Dalvin Cook have a career game. He had 19 totes for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns with some yards in the air. This guy is money. I can't wait to start him against the Lions this week. Diggs was four catches on 7 targets, 49 yards and a touchdown. Kind of salvaged his day with that touchdown. Thielen has completely fallen off. 2 catches on 2 targets for 19 yards. Rudolph was 3 catches on 3 targets for 23 yards.
And the crazy thing with Thielen, it's the same time of the year. The same thing happened to him last year where he just fell off a cliff. He was not hoping for you. And it's at this same time of the year, it's tough. Meanwhile, he's been stellar for you all year long. So if those who traded him away and got like several nice pieces, to help them in their championship lineup, kudos to you guys.
That's right. So here, go ahead and start Cook. Go ahead and start Diggs. Start Thielen. You're not super comfortable starting Cousins or Rudolph.
Nope.
But if you need a tight end, and Rudolph's your only option, you got to roll with it. Your other someone comparable that may be on the waiver wires that you could pick up would be Herndon. I think Herndon is an okay play this week, but there's nothing sexy on the waiver right now for tight ends, and there hasn't been for quite a while.
Gerald Everett possibly.
Yeah, man, but just Goff. I don't want anyone that relies on Goff throwing you the ball right now. To be honest, there are guys, of course, you're going to play, but Goff just has not looked good. Stafford, flipping over to the other side of the ball here. Stafford was 22 for 29, 208 yards and a touchdown last week. Not terrible. Probably not winning you a week,
still wasn't
but not
doing
terrible.
anything for you.
That's right. Galladay, you probably weren't playing Stafford anyway last week.
Right.
Galladay, however, 7 catches on 8 targets, 146 yards. Would have been great if he got in the end zone, but 146 yards, that's big. That's big.
Yeah.
You're looking for that bounce back.
Yeah, we told you to start him last week, and you're welcome, guys.
That's right. And there's another guy that if you were listening to Hoos, the Prophet, talk about, you may have started him. And he may have helped you win a week last week in your semifinals. And if you didn't listen, shame on you. This boy is Zach Zinner. 10 totes for 45 yards and a touchdown. Hoos, do you want to talk about Zinner for a minute?
Oh, man. But, guy, this is a point of the show where Chris is listening in and he's shaking his head because he can't believe, that I'm getting to talk about guys like Zach Zinner and a year ago Chris Thompson. Because these are guys that I've been beating the horn on. I was on the Pat Fitzmaurice show, a couple weeks ago, and I was talking about Zach Zinner, and not saying that you could start him, but get him on your team, and definitely take a look at him. And he's been getting it done with limited production. He only had 10 carries last week, 45 yards in the touchdown. The week before against Arizona, 12 carries with 54 yards on touchdown. He's been getting these touchdowns. They're not giving the ball to LeGarrette Blount. They're giving the ball to Zach Zinner. And if they give him like a large role, Kerryon Johnson's on IR. Give this guy the ball, and I think he can get it done. He can even catch passes. He caught 3 passes, albeit didn't get you any yards, but still caught the ball. If you're in a PPR, it's nice. Zach Zinner. Yes, it's nice to finally have this guy do what he's doing. It's not the sexiest, but hey, you can use him.
So we let Hoos just profess his love here. Now I have to put a slight damper on it. This week they are playing the Vikings. They are playing the Vikings. This is a tough game to predict what's going to happen. We think that the Vikings are going to dominate this game, and it's going to be tough for the Lions to move the ball. But anything can happen. And if they get down there, Zinner looks to be the guy to possibly punch in punch in the TD for you because they just really don't have anyone else other than Galladay. Okay, now what do we got next? We got the Bills at the Patriots. Josh Allen, this guy he's kind of been a stud for you. I mean, it sounds weird saying that, but he's been a stud recently. He was 13 for 26, 204 and a touchdown, which is not super impressive, but he is getting it done with his legs, which is a nice floor. He also ran for a touchdown last week. Robert Foster, this guy, let me talk about this guy for a second. He has been sneaky good. 4 catches on 5 targets, 108 and a touchdown last week. 4 out of the last 5 weeks, this guy has put up 100 yards. Most people don't even know who this guy is. If you're looking for someone this week, you had a Tyler Boyd injury, you had a Sanders injury, you've had a few other injuries. You're looking for a big play guy. This is Foster is the guy that Allen is relying on. It's not Zay Jones. It's not anyone else on that team. Foster is getting the looks downfield. He's the field stretcher. And
he's a beast. He's a beast of a guy.
You've
seen this guy?
Yeah. I watched some. I went and watched some highlights just because some of these guys come under the radar, and this is one of those guys, and he's good. He looks good. Shady McCoy has missed 2 weeks, but should play. He hasn't been doing much for you this week, so if you're in the championship, you're probably not relying on him. For the Patriots side of the ball, Brady left a lot out to be desired. Did I say that right? He did leave a lot to be desired. He was 25 for 36 last week, 279, a touchdown, and a bad interception. He has not looked good recently. They just lost Josh Gordon. Quit football again to work on his mental health. I wish this guy a speedy recovery and whatever his future endeavor is. I think that he will never play another snap in the NFL. I truly believe that. But again, we wish him the best. Gronk fell off again last week. 2 catches for 21 yards. Hopefully he bounces back and didn't cost you your semis. Edelman has really been the stalwart for that team. 7 catches on 11 targets and 90 yards. Did not get in the end zone, but in a PPR, he's been very good for you. Expect him to have a pretty good week again this week. Sony Michel was 13 for 59. James White had a total of 37 yards. Ever since Rex Burkhead came back, it has really thrown a wrench in that backfield and kind of gone back to the old Belichick ways where you really could not trust a Patriots running back, and it's very disappointing for a lot of you here at this point in the season. Hogan had a big touchdown. He only had 3 targets last week, but he did have a big long touchdown catch and run, and he may be worth an ad with Josh Gordon being out if you are desperate. Next, we have Packers at the Jets. Aaron Rodgers was 25 for 42 last week, 274, no touchdown, and an interception late in the game when they were driving, trying to make some sort of a miracle comeback. Aaron Jones has got put on IR, another guy that's really hurting you. Jamal Williams, hopefully you had him as a backup. I know he's not really a stud, but he did come in and have 12 totes for 55 and a TD. He is dealing with a toe injury that has popped up on the report, so monitor that if you were hoping for him to fill in. Devontae Adams, this guy, I don't know what else to say about this guy. He is Mr. Consistent for you every single week. He usually gets a touchdown, but he did not. He still had 8 catches for 119 yards, so he did not cost you your week. Jimmy Graham, I really expected more from this guy over the season. He had 3 catches for 32 yards. Not a whole lot else to say there. Rodgers is expected to play this week. He has been dealing with some sort of an injury. Play Adams with confidence. If you need Rodgers, you can probably play him. He can put up some points on the Jets. Hopefully Jimmy does something, but I wouldn't count on that. If you have to play him, it is what it is. But I would look for somebody, a guy that I picked up to play over Jimmy, like we were talking about earlier, was Herndon, who's on the other side of the ball here. Sam Darnold was 24 for 30 on 38 tries last week, 253 yards in the air and 2 touchdowns. Elijah McGuire, 18 for 42 and a touchdown. Not a great stat line, but still got it done for you, and still a good play this week if you're hurting at running back. Robbie Anderson, 7 grabs on 11 targets, 96 yards and a touchdown. This guy is really showing us what we expected from him early in the season when he was drafted in the middle rounds. So if you found him on free agency recently and picked him up, good for you, because he is probably helping you with all of his injuries. Herndon had 3 catches on 4 targets for 53 yards. That's a pretty normal stat line for him, and that's really what you should expect and hope for a touchdown to get you into the double digits. Moving on to the Texans at the Eagles. This should be a fun game, and Foles has kind of given the Eagles a little life after going in and taking down the Rams in LA. I'm still not necessarily a believer in the talent of Nick Foles, but that team does seem to rally around him. Deshaun Watson, 22 on 28 tries last week, 294 and 2 TDs. This guy is a monster. You got to play him. I expect him to have a big game even on the road in Philadelphia. That defense should travel. Hopkins, monster. Best receiver in the NFL, at least best hands. This guy, it doesn't matter if they single or double cover him. This guy knows how to high point the ball, and he comes down with everything. I love watching him play. He is one of the most elite and most fun wide receivers to watch in the NFL. Miller hurt a lot of guys last week. He went out early with an injury. He was limited Thursday. Not sure if he's going to play again this week or not. Blue would likely be the beneficiary of that if Miller can't go. Kiki may play. This guy is a stud when he's healthy, but we haven't seen much from him recently. I wouldn't count on him in your championship here this week. Demaryius Thomas caught 6 balls on 8 targets for 59 yards. He's been doing decent since the trade, still having a little bit of trouble really being reliable for you. Okay, and now for the Eagles. Foles, like we said, the team really rallies around him. He's not a great quarterback, and I wouldn't play him this week, but
right.
the team rallies around him. He's starting again. Looked decent against the Rams. No touchdowns. He does make Jeffrey very worthwhile and a decent play. Jeffrey had a huge game last week, and you know who is not the beneficiary of Jeffrey having a good game? Mr. Zach Ertz. Ertz is Mr. Reliable when Wentz is in, but not with Foles. And this should honestly scare you going into your championship game because Ertz has been such a big factor for your teams. It's going to be very tough to rely on him with Foles at the helm. Josh Adams did not have a great game. 15 totes, 28 yards, did get a touchdown, which saved his production a little bit, but he left a couple of times with injury and had to go out. Smallwood came back in and was the beneficiary for that. Smallwood was 10 totes, 48 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Who are the must starts for you here in the Texans Eagles game?
Texans Eagles.
Gotta be Hopkins.
I don't know about must starts other than Hopkins.
Yeah, and probably Jeffrey, right?
I don't know if he's a must, but I think you're going to use him as a flex.
Okay, all right.
I think you're going to use him as a flex. Thomas, you're going to use him as a flex. Other than that, you probably found guys that was going to help you along the way. That's doing it for you right now. Like Gus Edwards. Even a Zach Zenner. By some means, yeah. It's other options out there. Tim Patrick, Deshaun Hamilton. There's other options right now. So.
All right, Falcons at Panthers. Moving on to the next game. Ryan was 22 completions on 36 tries, 231 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I expect him to have a pretty good game this week against a shell of their former self, the Panthers, the Carolina Panthers, not looking so hot. Coleman had a huge game last week, 11 carries, 145 yards, and a touchdown. Where has this been? He's looking like a must start this week against the Panthers. Julio Jones caught 6 balls, 82 yards, 1 TD. He was limited today in practice, but should be good to go. Keep an eye on that. The only other guy that I would possibly flex this week is probably Ridley. I know Hooper let you guys down. He could be an okay start this week. Flipping over to the Panthers, Cam is done for the season. He has looked awful. Yep. I don't think that this affects McCaffrey too much. McCaffrey is still a beast. He didn't practice today being Thursday for rest reasons, and I really don't think it hurt because Cam has been so bad. I don't think that with Heineke coming in that it'll really affect McCaffrey too much. We don't expect Heineke. Am I saying that right? Heineke. He will start.
Hinky.
I typed it in wrong here. I was reading it. I was like, man, this just doesn't make sense. He's going to start. You can't start him. don't expect any of the receivers to have big games with this guy. You can't rely on it whatsoever. So if you have DJ Moore and Samuel, please don't play them because it's so
you can't.
predictable.
Yeah.
Only McCaffrey. That's really the only guy you can play on the Panthers side of the ball here. Agreed, Who's?
No, 100%, 1,000%. It's championship time.
That's
you don't
right.
want to fool around. You don't want to fool around.
That's right. No fooling around here. This is the no fool zone. Giants at Colts. Another early game. Manning, 21 completions on 44 attempts, 229 yards, and interception. Man, sorry about your Giants, Who's. OBJ
I know.
likely missing again. Ingram stepped up last week though. Eight catches for 75 yards.
He did.
That's not too shabby.
Yeah.
Barkley had an off week, but clearly a stud. Obviously,
yeah, tough defense.
Nothing to see here. Sterling Shepard caught 2 balls on 9 targets for 37 yards. Him and Manning just seem to be off. But I think it's more a product of poor throws from Manning than talent from Shepard, because Shepard's really a pretty good player.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is at this point in Manning's career. He can't support so many fantasy options, so it's not going to look good for Shepard until we get a new quarterback in there. So,
yeah, I do think that Barkley was the right pick, hands down.
Oh yeah.
No question. Generational talent. That guy's a monster.
I think
who else is
in the draft, even aside from Mayfield. I'd rather have Barkley.
See, I think that the Browns did well. I think that taking Baker and then getting Nick Chubb was better.
I think they did amazing.
Yeah,
but I don't think the Giants were in the same situation, and I'd rather have went the Giants route.
Yeah, but honestly, it might have been fun to see.
We needed to address the line.
That's true.
It was, man, it's Barkley. It's beautiful. Had
it would have been fun
Barkley
to see Baker
and then
with
somehow
OBJ.
And got like Chubb. A Baker and then Chubb. Nowhere to Grissom a bit, but hang out with us. Had we gone that route, we would have still needed to address the line, and we just wouldn't have been able to do so had we gone that route. So,
flipping over to the other side of the ball, Andrew Luck. This guy is a monster. He is winning you some fantasy football championships out here. Hopefully not too much though. I'm playing against him this week, but hard to say anything bad about him. The guy is a monster. Hilton had 5 grabs for 85 yards. Not a huge game, but likely going to have a decent game this week. Mack was 27 totes for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. He absolutely ripped up my Dallas Cowboys defense. It was tough to watch. And because it was so tough to watch, I decided not to watch a lot of that game. It was embarrassing and frankly frustrated me. Ebron had enough off game, but is a must start. Next we have Jags at the Dolphins. Leonard Fournette was 11 carries, 46 yards. Really disappeared, but should have a big bounce back game against the Dolphins. Dede Westbrook had 3 grabs for 21, but did score on a punt return, and he really seems to be the only wide receiver that you.
Oh yeah, that's connected with the quarterback. Yeah,
for the Jags, and he has looked pretty good the last few weeks. So he's actually not a terrible play if you're dealing with some injuries.
Not at all.
Cody Kessler, what do we got to say about this guy other than he's just bad?
Yeah, terrible.
He hurts.
Stinks.
Dolphin side of the ball, Ryan Tannehill, 11-24, 108 yards. That's such a terrible stat line. He disappeared last week. A little moment of silence here for Mr. Dependable. Frank the Tank Gore is on IR. I think this may be the first time in his career that he's ever been put on IR. So if you've been wondering for the past 13 years, 18 years, however long he's been in the NFL, when he was finally going to break, this is it. It happened. I feel so bad. Frank Gore, he's a man. He is the man. He will be in the Hall of Fame.
Frank the Tank.
We got the other running backs here. Drake did nothing special. Probably won't this week either. Balaj here, 12 for 123. Where did this come from? Who is this guy? Tell us a little bit about this guy.
This is the guy that we've seen do it. I mean, in the and in the practice, like in the preseason, we've seen him do it early when he first got signed on the practice squad. If you're paying attention to this, if you're able to, I mean, I live down here in Miami, so I'm able to kind of see this a little bit more than others. So like, this is not completely out of nowhere, but they had him buried. They had him buried. I'm not gonna go out and say that he's gonna be, the guy you're starting, in your second slot, but I think you could start him in a deep league. I think you could start him in a flex capacity, possibly in a 12-team, 14-team league. I think you could use him.
All right. The only wide receiver really worth talking about right now is Amendola, and he's not even really worth talking about. He had 3 catches for 30 yards. Kenny Stills disappeared again. You just can't trust anyone that Tannehill's throwing to. I don't know how he made Landry so relevant. But
yeah, it was better. It was better when Osweiler was there, because at least Amendola was like a guy you started like without question every week.
Right.
Pretty much.
Right. Next, we have Rams at the Cardinals. This is their first midday game. Goff did not play so well last week, and I don't know if I'd really trust him this week either. Gurley, he's an absolute monster. Not much else to say about him other than he has been limited. He did kind of injure his knee.
MRI showed. Yeah, again, yeah.
MRI showed that there was nothing structural, so it's likely that they are just resting him. Even if he is going to play or not play, they would be doing this exact same thing. We assume that he is going to play.
Who are you starting, though? Are you starting C.J. Anderson, or are you starting John Kelly?
It's Kelly. I mean, Anderson was just now added to the team. Anderson is he is a safety net for the Rams'
goal line.
actual playoffs. He is a safety, not a veteran presence to have for them in case anything were to become worse with Gurley. But I think the real reason that they did that, the only reason they did that, is because that they lost Brown to IR, so they really needed something else. We do expect Gurley to play. However, Woods had 7 grabs for 74 yards. Cooks had 6 grabs for 59 yards. You're probably playing these guys. They're likely a couple of your best options that you have on your team, but not super exciting plays right now with how Goff is playing. He has fallen off pretty hard since his safety blanket Cooper Kupp went down.
Mm-hmm. Kupp is gone.
Kupp is gone.
Sad times, along with what we're going through right now, right after the fantasy championships, right after the glory, we're going to experience some sad times, and that's what the Rams are already dealing with. So
we're not there yet, though. We're not that. We still got this last week or two. So let's enjoy it while we still have it. Josh Rosen had a terrible game.
Savored like a nice wine.
That's right. Rosen had a terrible game last week, and he ended up getting benched for Glennon, who actually Glennon came in and threw a touchdown. He actually saved Larry Fitz's day.
Mm-hmm.
DJ. Dude's a monster. You got to play him this week. Fitz had 7 snags for 82 yards last week. Fitz is still a decent play. The Rams are letting some people get open, and Fitz is a guy that could capitalize and hit the holes. So I think Fitz is still a decent play. And honestly, if you would have told me this 4 or 5 weeks ago, I would call myself crazy. But I don't think that the Rams just absolutely blow out the Cardinals. The Rams just haven't looked that good, and they allow people. Of course, they're going to win this game, but they allow people to stay in it. And if they can just feed DJ the ball, he might have enough production to make the game actually be a game, which seems counterintuitive. But
I don't know. I think the Rams bounce back. I think DJ doesn't really have as good of a game, and I think the Rams bounce back, and it's going to be.
I hope so. I hope so. Something has just looked really, really off there, and Goff is going to have to step it up, and Gurley's going to need to be healthy for this to just be an absolute demolition of a game for the Rams. Next, we have Bears at Niners. Hoos, another midday game. Trubisky was 20 for 28 last week, 235 and 2 touchdowns, and he gets it done with his legs too. Not a terrible play this week if you need him. Howard was 19 for 60. and a touchdown last week, so he had a pretty dang good game. Cohen had 55 yards and a touchdown, but did have a fumble, which was fairly costly. He also almost returned a punt for a touchdown late in the game, gave them real good field goal position. Burton got it done last week. He only had 36 yards, but did have a touchdown. A-Rob has really fallen off. Tough to depend on him in your championship this week.
Oh, yeah.
He did have 54 yards on 3 grabs.
You're still flexing them.
Yeah. You're not super comfortable. I would, who would you rather flex, Cohen or A-Rob?
Cohen.
Me too. I think that Howard and Cohen are both playable this week. Trey Burton, if you got him, you're probably using him. The tight ends are just that weak. Trubisky, he's a good play. You know who I don't think I would play is Mullins against that Bears defense.
No,
Mullins
I'm not playing him.
Really good. He's been really good.
Yeah, but you can't play him against the Bears. I mean, Bears have,
Yeah.
Bad news.
Monsters.
Bad news.
Number one defense is
Bad news.
Have them. They may win you a championship. They may put you some real points for you.
I've drafted them in so many leagues. It's been so nice.
Yeah,
they're just such a difference maker on the defensive position.
And as soon as that Khalil Mack trade happened,
you just
no one had the Bears defense. Nobody had the Bears in your leagues. No one.
No,
had the Bears defense.
You know what? I was kind of thinking about the Bears regardless, because the Bears last year was starting to look
kind of sneaky good.
Yeah, they were sneaky good.
Yeah.
They were formidable.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about using them anyway. I was thinking, you know what? I'm gonna grab the Bears at the end of the like an end. And literally at my home fantasy, my home league, while we're drafting, that trade happened. So I was like, oh man, yeah, I'm definitely grabbing the Bears. So
absolutely.
I grabbed them there. I grabbed them, a couple other leagues later.
Yeah, I'm not upset.
Beautiful.
I'm not upset that I picked them up in our dynasty league that we have.
Look at that. I mean,
feeling
the
pretty
Bears.
good. Bears dynasty defense looking pretty good, baby.
Bears.
Breida, this guy, he's been getting it done for you this season with McKinnon being out. 96 total yards, but he was limited in Thursday's practice. Pettis caught all 5 of his targets for 83 yards. Pettis has come on really strong and been a very reliable player in the back end of the season. Kittle fell off a little bit after having that monster game last week. He only had 3 catches for 51 yards. Starting Pettis, starting Breida, starting Kittle. Are you starting any of these guys this week against the Bears?
Pettis, Kittle.
No Breida though.
Breida. Yeah. Breida as well. I mean, Breida's been so good, this year. I as soon as the Niners didn't add anyone in free agency or via draft, really. I mean, they had what's that guy, Joe? What is it? The guy that was a rookie last year. Can't think of his name because he didn't do anything, but his name's Joe something. Joe Schmo, I guess.
Probably Williams.
Yeah.
A lot of Williams out there.
Yeah, Joe Williams. He didn't do. As soon as they didn't address that, I think we had the show with a Jake Seeley, and I said who, and they said who was the winners of the draft, and I said Breida. Even though McKinnon, was there, we've seen Breida used with Carlos Hyde, and he got actually greater yards, per average. With him there. So it's been nice for Breida. It would have been even nicer if he was healthy. I think he would have been a top 7, RB in PPR. But we just haven't seen him be healthy.
Yeah.
I think if he was healthy, I don't think that's a stretch at all.
I'd give him back into RB1, but that's either way, we're talking about this guy is productive here. Definitely splitting hairs. Next game we have up on the dock is Steelers and Saints. This is another midday game. Big Ben had a tough one last week against the Patriots. Didn't have a huge game. It was pretty low scoring. He should bounce back this week against the Saints. We're hoping for high scoring. Connor is likely not to play again with the high ankle sprain, which means Mr. Jalen Samuels, Mr. 172 yards last week. You got to start this boy. And if you were fortunate enough to be in a Yahoo
tight end,
and you can play him as your tight end, this is gross and it's really unfair going into your finals. But I want some people to tweet me and let me know that you started him in the tight end, and he absolutely dominated for you, and you got to start 4 running backs in your league.
Money.
Antonio Brown, 4 catches, got a touchdown, wasn't a big game. You're still starting him. He's a stud. Juju was limited with a groin injury. He only had 40 yards last week, but it was an off game for everyone other than Jalen Samuels.
It was a bad game across the league. If you look around in fantasy leagues, it was low. It was low scoring.
Yeah, it's been a bad couple of weeks.
If you squeaked it out, he had a huge sweep of the whole forehead, and just flickered the sweat on out. It was tough.
It was tough, and if you managed to pull through, I'm not sure if you sacrificed a small goat or what you did.
Right.
100%. Vance McDonald.
Pray to the fantasy gods, and the fantasy gods did bless you. So finals, here we are.
Yeah. So I hope you guys have put together a decent team. I know mine is hurting, but still has a pretty good shot.
We're here.
Brees should have a bounce back week at home.
Yeah.
He's been getting a lot of negativity thrown his way, but they've been on the road for the past 3 weeks, and we know that Drew Brees does not do well on the road. His only 2 road games were earlier in the season, and they were against bottom 5 defenses. Every other road game that he has had, he has not performed. When he is at home in a dome where he's comfortable and gets to go see his kids at night, when he gets done, give him a hug, the dude balls out. So Brees should have a big game at home, not worried about the Steelers defense whatsoever. Alvin Kamara. Man.
Nice.
This guy's a monster. I love watching him play. I really need him to have a big week this week. Ingram.
I wish football was longer so we could see him just
right.
truly dominate. They just had more quarters, and I don't know, 8 quarters.
Yeah, that's right. You know what? We're starting this.
Probably excessive, but
I'll be the second person to sign after you on that one. Ingram had 12 rushes for 63 yards. He's been tough to trust recently, and a lot of that is as a whole, the Saints have not looked really great on the road. A lot of that, I'm not sure really where it stems. I don't want to put all the blame on Brees, but when he plays well, the rest of the team plays well. So you can deduce what you want there. Michael Thomas had 7 snags for only 49 yards. He had a couple decent-sized catches called back. It was really a low-scoring game. We do expect him to bounce back. Start all of your Saints. Really, I think start all of your players on both teams.
What about Ted Ginn coming back from injured reserve? Are you flexing him out in any leagues that you're in?
No, I don't think that I am.
What would be the size of a league that you would have to flex him? You're in a league and you're like, you know what? He's coming back. I'm in a deep league. I gotta flex him. I have to. What size?
So just for example, I have him in our dynasty, which is 3 wide receivers and 3 flexes.
Okay.
And you're in that one, and I'd be looking at possibly playing him over someone like Callaway. So that's the kind of question I'm asking myself. But you know me, Hoos. I'm the kind of show me the money, right?
Right.
I need to see it for a week. I need to see you back in action and looking. I'd rather be a week late than throw you in a lineup and get a goose egg when I could have started somebody to do something for me.
I hear you, bro.
But I would like to see him back because they look a lot better with him. They don't have a field stretcher.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good for them as far as at least actual football into the playoffs.
Yeah. So I'm rooting for the Saints. I like what they have going.
New Orleans.
Sunday night, primetime games. Primetime? You want to talk about primetime? We got Chiefs at the Seahawks. We got a good game. This should be an exciting game. Love when we have good, when they schedule actual good games for these primetime games. Chiefs at the Seahawks. We'll start with the Seahawks, Seattle side of the ball here. Big Russ, 23 for 31 on 31 attempts last week, 237 yards and 2 touchdowns. Go ahead and play this guy. He may win you your championship. You know who else might? The Beast, Mr. Chris Carson.
Ooh.
He's not getting the respect. He is not getting.
He is
the
not.
respect.
Why?
I don't know, but he's an RB1 every single week for you. And if you have him and you're not starting him, I don't know why. I don't know why. Forget the name. Look at
and
the
you
number.
know who else might be a good guy for you this week?
I
want to go out there and
is he bald?
No, I'm gonna go out and say Mike Davis. I
Oh,
think especially Penny's missing. You know, the guy caught quite a bit of balls last week.
Yeah, he could do something.
I think against the Chiefs, could be a high scoring game, or decent. It's not going to be a low scoring one, that's for sure. I think Mike Davis is going to be out there quite a bit. So if you're in a PPR, I think you could flex him out.
Okay, you heard it from the Hoos. I'm probably not flexing him personally, but Hoos told us to play Zinner, and that worked out. I'm just a little more skeptical on these guys, but Hoos he uses a little crystal ball and he sees some things sometimes. Doug Baldwin had 4 snags, 77 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This guy is finally playing again, but if you have him, great. You probably didn't use him to get there, but you can use him now. Tyler Lockett fell off. 2 targets, 2 catches, 45 yards. He has been the man for Russ.
Yeah, he's still starting.
And now, they're running the ball and throwing to Baldwin, and Russ is spreading it around. Probably still starting Lockett, like you said, but I'm not getting the warm and fuzzies, No,
I mean, you're not feeling very good about it at all. But, like at this point, I think this is the part of the fantasy where they're saying, hey, you start with the guys that got you there, and I think he's a part of the guys that got you there. Lower your expectations, maybe you get about 9 points from them.
Well, who was it? I don't know if it's some
flex
old movie, Clint Eastwood or something. What's it saying? You
feeling lucky?
No. What's the old thing? You gotta dance with who brung you. Whoever brought you to the dance, you got to be dancing with them.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you can't go out here looking crazy,
So you play the guys that got you there.
All right.
Mahomes must start, right? Like every single week, not even a question. Don't get cute.
Can't get cute. No. Don't doll yourself up here.
Yeah. In the backfield, obviously, Hunt had his incident. He's out. Ware has taken over duties.
Screwed me in so many leagues.
But he's been out now. Our boy Ware's been out. But he did get a limited practice in on Thursday after missing last week. For a lot of you probably would have liked Ware just to stay gone if you had D. Willie.
Oof.
Yeah.
Balled out.
10 rushes, 49 yards, and 2 touchdowns, plus some through the air. And really all that's happening now is really confusing people.
Another guy out of Miami that, I kept a careful eye on, D. Willie.
Yep.
He's another guy that's they've got some good backs. They can roll with just about anybody here. Yep. So it's looking good.
It's good for that team to have both of them. It's good for them to have options. But as a fantasy owner, if you have the 2 guys, or even if you have one of them, it makes it very difficult because we have
it's tough.
What Andy Reid's about to do. And if it were me, I would play D. Williams.
I'm still playing D. Will
for 2 reasons. One,
I'm playing Ware as well as a flex too, though. I think I'm playing either one, just because I think that they may both play quite a bit.
Yeah. For me,
Watkins is Watkins practicing? I don't think he is. I could be wrong.
I don't think Watkins is going to play, and even if he is, I'm not starting.
Well, Watkins does add a different dynamic to that team.
He does. He does for sure. It's good for that team, but you don't want to be relying on.
I'm not saying
want to rely
start
on
him. I'm just saying the way he affects the rest of the game.
Right. And for me, back to what we were saying, I would play D. Willie over Ware for 2 reasons. Williams Damian has been more productive with the touches, and then also Ware coming off of an injury. Who knows if he re-aggravates it? Damian Williams just really is the guy there. He just looks better. Kelsey had an off game last week, but he's a must start. Hill had an off game. He was kind of dealing with a heel injury on the Thursday night. He's had some time to rest, and he's a must start. He isn't even on the injury report. Start everyone, right?
Yeah, you got to start. You have to at this point. This is going to be a nice fantasy game where you could just plug everyone in.
That's right. So we have one more game to get to. Not quite as exciting of a game as the Chiefs Seahawks. This is the Monday night game. We're talking about Broncos at the Raiders, the black hole. You know who has not been good is Case Keenum. Doesn't have Demaryius Thomas, now doesn't have Sanders. It seems to maybe be affecting Lindsey, which hurts my feelings. They're dealing with
tough.
some young guys here. They have Patrick, they have Sutton, and they have Hamilton. It's really kind of roulette figuring out which one of these guys is going to have the best game. None of them are putting out huge stat lines. Patrick had 5 catches for 65 yards. Hamilton had 7 catches for 46 yards. Sutton was just straight disappointing. If you had to choose one of these guys, who would you play this week, or would you just say, no, I'm not going to. I'm finding somebody else rather than trying to guess which one of the 3 is going to have the better game?
All right, well, you tell me, okay? 100% because this is where a situation where I'm actually in. So,
Okay.
Patrick, against Oakland, Godwin against Dallas, Riddick, Jeff Wilson, Balaj, Foster.
You can stop right there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's between 2 for me. It's between 2, but one stands out heavy to me, and it's Foster. This guy's been sneaky good. He's the number 1 target
even against New England
for Josh Allen.
Who takes away like the guy?
I know, but is he? He's been so under the radar that I'm not even sure that he's the guy that they try to take away. With McCoy back, I think that because Josh Allen, he's a rookie and he's raw, right? So he's not somebody that's really going to beat the Patriots with the run. Or with his arm, excuse me. He's not going to be able to throw it well enough to beat the Patriots, I don't think. What they are going to be worried about with McCoy coming back is they're going to want to take away Josh Allen's ability to run and scramble, because you can't let a quarterback put up 100 yards on the ground. So I think that they're going to try to force him to beat them with his arm. So they're going to shut down him running, and I think that they're going to try to shut down McCoy. And honestly, Zay Jones is kind of still the guy that I think Belichick may try to shut down just because he's more of a high profile target. I think Foster can have a big game here.
Yeah, I actually have Tim Patrick in. He's got 12 catches for 150 yards in his last couple games. And he's got Oakland this week, who doesn't scare me, even though they seem to be better on paper on the defense.
Here's what I would say. If you want a guy that has a really high ceiling, not a high floor, not a great floor, but has a really high ceiling, I would go Foster. The guy's been putting up 100-yard games pretty consistently. If you are in a PPR and you kind of just want your 10 points and to move on, you have your other studs, and you just want this guy to do his part, then maybe you just go with Patrick.
And I think that's where I am in this one particular home league with that. I continue to dominate on 5 times straight. Katrina, it feels good to do that in those leagues. So, congratulations to those home league guys that are, you're here again, that you continue to dominate on your league mates. Congratulations to you guys. Just come up with the worst punishments to dole out. It's your time.
That's right. And the only other guy we have to talk about really on this team is Lindsey. He had an off game, but we do expect him to bounce back. He averages over 5 yards a carry on the season. Oakland lets up quite a bit on the ground.
Nixon just tore them up.
Yeah, so Lindsey should be a good play if you have him. I'm actually having to decide Lindsey or Gurley this week, which is really tough for me.
That's ugly.
It is. And, obviously, Gurley's fully healthy.
Obviously. But,
right.
it's still tough to decide. As
well,
crazy as it sounds.
It's how much. Well, what you're trying to guess is how much and if they are going to limit him. What is this? What is really the status of his injury, and what is the game script going to be? If it's a close game, then Gurley's going to play the whole thing.
Too.
And but if they get up early and they can just run out the clock, they're not going to do it with Gurley. If the O-line is playing well enough, and it's a legitimate concern, so it's sickening, but I have to decide whether or not I would sit Gurley. For the Raiders, we have Derek Carr, who posted 21 completions for 263 yards and a touch last week.
Nathan Peterman.
How does he have a job? Jordy Nelson.
Gruden got his guy.
Maybe you know what? You know how there's a lot of fantasy players that go out and they add one guy to their bench for good luck. Maybe Nathan Peterman is that one guy that is useless that John Gruden's adding to the end of his bench for good luck.
Yeah. Maybe he reminds him of Lucky from the Lucky Charm box of
I don't know. You know what? I'm not going to try to guess what's going on there. Jordy Nelson, he's been pretty good late. This is kind of what I expected from him when I drafted several leagues this year, was for him to be doing this with Derek Carr. I kind of thought he'd be Carr's guy, even with Cooper there. Nelson has 6 catches for 88 yards last week. He's been balling out for you. You can use him. Start him. Jared Cook, 2 catches for 23 yards. Not a great line, but you are going to start him this week. The only other guy really worth talking about here is Jalen Richard, barely startable in a PPR right now. He has fallen off. Who's anyone else you'd like to talk about in this game?
In this game, no. Yeah.
Well,
I
think that wraps it up for us. Hoos, thank you for joining me. Always a pleasure. This was a fun week, and sorry
man. We're officially at the sad times of the year. We're going to put out a show where we're wrapping up stuff, and it's going to be good but sad. But, we're probably going to give you guys like a week off or so. Actually, we'll probably be back for you guys are, in crappy leagues that are doing week 17. Some of us are in those. So we'll be back here. There.
We do have one more show next week. It's going to be rather than doing a Wednesday and a Thursday show, I think we're just going to do one. We're doing one show next week, which should be a fun show. And we thank all of you for listening all season long. It's been a lot of fun. We appreciate you guys. If you do win your leagues, please donate whatever you can. A little bit of that, if we did help you in any way, to Rob. We are a charity-based organization, and all of our proceeds do go to him. That is why we are doing this.
Go to sleeperwire.com or just Rob JR at GoFundMe to donate those funds. He's going to greatly appreciate it. We appreciate it. That's all we do this show for, as Lucas was alluding to. And congratulations to you winners, you listeners. Good luck, guys. Championship.
Best of luck. Over and out.